الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. We express our praise and gratitude to Allah Ta'ala, and we seek blessings upon the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So, once again, ayah 20 through 29, 21 through 29 is summarizing for us the Quran of Makkah. And then 30 through 39 is giving us human origins, or the origins of our story on earth. And we said last time that there's three stories here. The announcement, the announcement, the sajda.
I forgot that.
Oh, forget to use my fingers.
Announcement, frustration,
the sajda, and then
the tree.
And then the tree. Okay. In addition, connecting ayah 30 with the ayah that came before, we also had aspects of our relationship with the earth. So ayah 30, we have a responsibility on the earth to be the khalifas of Allah on the earth. Ayah 29, that all that is on the earth has been created for us. If we just take those two on their own, ayah 29, all that is on the earth is created for us. Ayah 30, we are created to be khalifas of Allah on the earth. If we remove one, what's the consequence? So if it only said all that is on the earth is created for us, what would be the consequence in terms of our actions, our demeanor, our relationship with the earth? What do you think?
We can abuse it.
We would be
usurpers.
Yeah.
So, now, what if we removed all that is in the earth is created for us and only focused on the fact that we are khalifas on the earth?
We can't use it, or like what? So we wouldn't feel that we would be able to live, I guess.
Right.
So to
You would be
speak.
grounded.
Yeah, potentially. That you would be caught up in the sense of duty.
Duty, yes.
Yeah. So something to think about. We're going to have another, inshallah, if we get to another relationship that we have with the earth a little bit later on today. Okay, so in this announcement, Allah Ta'ala, as we discussed last time, He says to the angels, I am making a khalifa on the earth. We didn't really define khalifa except its literal meaning. Anybody remember what the literal meaning of khalifa is?
One who comes after.
One who comes later, right? One who comes after. One who comes after is probably even more accurate than one who comes later. This is especially interesting because if you look at the Saudi translation, most translations you'll see the vice-chair, vice-regent, all those big words, viceroy. I don't think I've ever seen viceroy. I'm thinking of
Viceroy. Hungry.
Anybody have the Muslim Khan translation on your phones or computers?
I got it now.
Okay, what is his translation for ayah 30? This is interesting because this is the one that's the Saudi endorsed one.
Oh, ayah 30.
Yeah.
It is. And remember, when your Lord said to the angels, verily I am going to place mankind generations after generations on earth.
Look at that.
Wait, what? Say it
Read it
again?
again, please.
Verily I am going to place mankind generations after generations on earth.
So the translation for Khalifa is generations after generations.
It seems
How
really
about
different, like two different.
Yeah, it's very, very different.
How about the Sahih International Translation? How's
Yeah.
that?
So that's a modified Yusuf Ali.
Oh, is that what it is?
What does that one say?
It says, let me pull it up here. I just want to give you the exact wording here. And it says successive authority.
Successive authority.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's still the notion of authority, responsibility.
Yeah.
Muhammad Asad says, behold, I am about to establish upon earth one who shall inherit it.
Well, that's also interesting too.
Yeah.
The point being that, as you know, Khalifa is a word that we often associate with political structure. In the Quranic context, it does not automatically mean political structure. The consistent way to look at it is a position of responsibility. But political structure, but Khalifa does not automatically mean that you have to have a caliphate, does not automatically mean that you have to have a Khalifa at the head of the caliphate or anything like that.
So why would the Saudis?
Because if the translation is saying that you have to have an Islamic authority,
Yeah.
then they're opening the door to
Essentially negating their own right to rule,
exactly,
legitimacy.
or they're by giving a very different translation, they're hopefully from their perspective diverting.
Side,
Yeah.
It's kind of a kufr.
Well, I wouldn't call it kufr.
No, I mean like a covering of a sidestep,
We'll call it a covering.
a spin. It's like a
But
spin.
Spin.
That's,
Yeah.
I agree.
Sorry.
No, from a literal standpoint, that's what kufr is. It's a spinning of the truth. Yeah.
So this is part of the well, this is part of the politics of translation. Translation has theology in it. It also has politics in it too. So then, as we discussed, they said, "Are you going to create someone? Are you going to place someone who's going to shed blood, while all we do is praise you and glorify you?" And what's the argument we made? That the angels, in their understanding, that they felt that they were the most qualified. That all we do is obey you. All we do is praise you. Therefore, by definition, we would be the most qualified for a responsibility. And then the opposite of that, taking that to its logical conclusion, would be destruction. Even a hint of disobedience of Allah Ta'ala, taken to its logical conclusion, would be destruction. Meaning, what are we answering? How do the angels know there's going to be bloodshed? So one is just using the reasoning. The opposite of obeying Allah Ta'ala would be destroying Allah Ta'ala's creation. Right.
Can you repeat that again?
Okay, so the question, or the answer to the question, or the answers to the question, when the angels said, "Are you going to create someone who's going to shed blood?"
Yeah.
What are some explanations? So one is that just taking basic logic, you're supposed to be in obedience to Allah Ta'ala. Even the slightest bit of disobedience would result effectively in taking to its full extent destruction.
Yeah.
Bloodshed, corruption, all those things. Right? So that's one explanation. Another explanation is that they've already seen what's been taking place on the
Right,
earth.
exactly.
Right? Either through the life of animals or through jinns. Did we talk about the story of Al-Hakam? Okay, we'll talk about Al-Hakam. Okay. Should we do it now? Okay, we'll do it now. So, there is I don't know if this is Israeliyat sources, this is our sources. Have we talked about what our Israeliyat sources in this class? Okay. So, a scholarly genre of literature is what we call Israeliyat. What does Israeliyat sound like?
Children of Israel.
Yeah. And so this is what we find in the books of Jews and Christians, in their scholarly texts, in their scriptures. And so as reference, it was not uncommon for scholars to go look in their books and see what they have to say.
So, but when you say the word Israel, that's actually referring to Prophet Yusuf, right?
So Israeliyat, just as a genre, is referring to Jews and Christians, but the name Israel is Yaqub.
Yaqub, sorry.
Yeah, Yaqub. And Israel in our books translates as Abdullah,
Okay.
although I suspect it's probably more like elevating to Allah.
Okay.
Il, essentially, when you see a name in our tradition that ends in Il, Jibril, Mikael, Israel, Israfil, Il is Allah. Right? So Jibril is potentially the Jabbar of Allah, and Jabbar is like the unstoppable will of Allah. Like Abdul Jabbar, Jabbar is the one whose will is unstoppable.
Wow. So whenever Allah had a will, He manifested that will through Jibreel.
Maybe that's one of the ways that
Yeah.
his will was manifested, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in any case, the point being that I don't know if the story I'm about to share with you is coming from the Prophet, peace be upon him, or if it's coming from the Israeliyat sources. And in terms of contemporary Salafis, often what you'll find in their publications of many classical books, they'll remove Israeliyat, saying that by definition they're not authentic, and so it'll be, so to speak, sanitized.
But we think it's okay.
I mean, so Ibn Kathir, for example, would quote Israeliyat sources, right? So it's fine as a reference.
Because I think Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, even in his teachings, does say that it's okay to use it, but mention it as such. That
Meaning,
there may be some falsehood in it, but we're trying to get the lesson from it.
the key point is that you can't take it for guidance,
Can't
right?
take it for guidance.
So there's the case of Umar radiallahu anhu, who's reading some pages, and the Prophet comes on and asks him, "What are you reading?" He says, "I'm reading some pages from the Torah." "And why are you reading this?" He says, "Just to learn." And then the Prophet, peace be upon him, is quoted as saying something along the lines of, "They would be following me." So Musa alayhi salam would be following me. Right? And so it's taken as a very strong discouragement against it. If you're reading it as a reference, then yeah, it's a reference. Here's what Jews and Christians say about the story of Adam. Right? Peace be upon him. But not as guidance. So it's not authoritative for us. Okay. I saw the photo.
It didn't work?
I don't know what's happening.
Okay.
My phone is stupid.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Farrell.
You couldn't get online?
Okay, good, he's there. Okay, good.
Okay. So,
I'm glad you got
so the story is that there was on the earth a big global war between jinns.
Wait, this is Israel.
This is either this is coming from some hadith narrations, but I'm suspecting it's coming from Israeliyat sources. Even though in Israeliyat sources there isn't really much of a belief in jinns, but you might find something in the Talmud like this.
So when the Sahabas heard this particular story,
That's the point I'm making. I don't know if they've heard this story.
they may not have
Yeah.
heard the story.
It could be something that later scholars found in their books.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. If the Prophet peace on him said it, then the Sahaba would have heard
For
it.
sure.
Okay, wait. So before you continue, what's the context of that
Okay, so-
the story?
How
Like-
did the angels? Why are they saying, "Are you going to create someone who's going to shed blood?"
Okay.
And so one understanding is they've seen
The
things on earth.
Israeliyat. Okay.
And so there's this massive war among the jinns. And one particular jinn named Azazil, Hebrew word, because it ends in il,
Yes.
right? Azazil, he establishes peace among the jinns. And then he's given a title, Al-Hakam, which sounds like what? What does Al-Hakam mean? Like the wise,
Wise,
the
yeah.
judge, the just. And so, sorry?
He's also a Jew.
He's also a jinn.
So Azazel was the guy who basically quelled this fight that was going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So another possible understanding for why the angels are saying, "Are you going to create someone who's going to shed blood?" is that they've seen animals devouring each other. Another is that they've seen this battle among the jinns. Another can be that they have a sense of what human nature is like. Another explanation is that their nature is light, it's nur. Okay? And the nature of nur is it puts everything in harmony. Whereas the nature of this worldly life, matter, is everything works according to friction. Right? I mean, think of how much friction and destruction it took just for the formation of the earth to what it is today and such. Or even think of light in the dunya sense, light is a result of friction. Right? So these are all different explanations. Nevertheless, the question that we raise from there is, looking at their example, is it okay to question Allah Ta'ala? And the point we led to is essentially that it's okay as long as you're willing to embrace the answer. Right? I mean, still there's adab in questioning Allah Ta'ala, but like if you're like, why is this happening to me? Why are all these things happening to me? Then be ready for what the answer is. The short answer is, it's Allah's will, but it may be that I am culpable also. I'm complicit in my condition. So, another point to think about this passage, we said there's three stories. We're speaking of a situation that is not on the earth necessarily. So these three stories are not necessarily in chronological order. Like, who knows how time applies in that time. Because we jump from that announcement to ayah 31. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And he taught Adam the names of all things. ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمْ. And then he turned to them, meaning, or then he showed them to عَلَى الْمَلَائِكَةِ, to the angels. فَقَالَ أَنْبِئُونِي. So then he said, inform me بِأَسْمَاءِ هَؤُلَاءِ. Inform me of the names of these, in kuntum sadiqin, if you are truthful. So Allah Ta'ala, a few events in this ayah. He has now taught the Adam peace be upon him, the names of all things. What does that mean?
Knowledge is important.
So one understanding we can take from this is that knowledge is important. Among humans, angels, jinns, humans are considered to be superior. Why? Because we have superior intellect. What else? What else can we take from this part that he taught him the names of all things? What does this mean?
That Allah gave the knowledge, so
So all the knowledge we have no knowledge except for Allah Ta'ala gave us. Another is, what are these names of? So it could be just the physical names of everything, and this can be a lesson about the nature of knowledge, that it begins with identification, potentially. Or this could be the names of Allah. These are all the names of Allah Ta'ala. That's what Adam alayhi salam is being taught. Again, all sorts of different explanations. The key point, Allah Ta'ala is giving knowledge to Adam alayhi salam. is then he turns to,
Is there any, when you read philosophy and,
Yeah.
and you study linguistics at a more metaphysical level,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, at the end of the day, you can break down all of knowledge into names. I mean, you're basically, you have an entity that you're calling something,
that's
right?
usually where everything begins,
So it's all names, like
Yeah.
all of knowledge is just names.
essentially.
You know,
Yeah.
so he
Either
really taught
define it.
Adam alayhi salam
Yeah.
all of knowledge.
Yeah. You know, it's the name of a thing or how a thing works, you're giving it a name, you're
Yeah.
giving the process name, yeah, absolutely. I think so.
I've also read this refers to language. That
The
this
nature of
is
language?
language.
Sure.
That it taught that language is not. It's something taught to us, given to us. That
Actually, I have a question.
Yes,
Like, in Christianity, isn't it like Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, right? And that was bad, but here it's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving them knowledge, so it's like,
let's get to that when we get to the story of the tree.
okay.
Your point is correct though.
Okay.
Okay, so then he turns to the angels, sorry?
I said, oh, I didn't know that.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll save the response also.
I didn't realize I said that out loud.
So he turns to the angels, give me the names of all these things, if what you say is true. What is this relevance of that last part? In kuntum sadiqin, if you're truthful.
Wait, who was saying that?
So Allah Ta'ala is saying this to the angels.
Oh,
He
okay.
teaches Adam alayhi salam the names of all things. Now he says to the angels, can you give me the names of all things?
Put them in their place
But why?
because they're the ones that are challenging.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it that they're challenging being
Yeah,
put into
yeah.
their place,
Yeah.
but essentially, if you legitimately, rationally feel you're most qualified, then you can do this, right? And so, in kuntum sadiqin, that you are truthful, meaning that you really believe you're most qualified for this job, right? Why am I emphasizing that it might not necessarily be challenging putting them in place? Because they're not humans, right? That would definitely be the potential behavior of a human, whereas the angels could just be saying rationally, almost like robots. Well, it seems like we're most qualified. We don't understand why you'd be making someone else. Yeah. Okay, so then how do they respond? Ayah 32. Alu, they say, Subhanaka, glory to you. Why do they say that?
Aren't you always supposed to start with praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Sure, but even simpler than that, that's what they do, right? They say, all we do is praise you, glorify you, so that's exactly what they did. La ilma lana, we have no knowledge, illa ma allamtana, we have no knowledge except for what you have taught us. Okay. Meaning, we don't know. We don't know the names of these things. Innaka anta alimul hakim. Innaka, indeed, you, anta, you. This is like double emphasis. Innaka, ka is referring to you, anta is referring to you. You are all-knowing and all-wise. So what are they saying? That your knowledge here, your wisdom here exceeds ours. So, the point has been made to the angels that Adam, peace be upon him, is more qualified for this than the angels are. Okay. So having said that, ayah 33. Allah, so he said, meaning Allah says, Ya Adamu, O Adam, ambihum bi asma'ihim. You inform them of the names of these of their names. Yeah. Falamma, and when amba'ahum bi asma'ihim, and when he informed them of their names, and then Allah Ta'ala gives this comment. Did I not say that I know what you, I know the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you conceal. If the point has already been made to the angels, okay, that Adam alayhi salam is most qualified for this position because of knowledge that Allah Ta'ala has given him, what would be the need for him to go through this exercise with Adam alayhi salam? It's already, angels have surrendered. Yet Allah Ta'ala still says to Adam, peace be upon him, okay, give the names of all things.
So like explain to us.
Okay? Even simpler.
Prove to the angels that you know it.
But they've already accepted.
Oh, I see.
To prove to whom?
To prove to Adam.
To prove to Adam, peace be upon him, that he's most qualified for this. This is something about human nature, right? That even though you're being told you're most qualified to do this, sometimes you need to see it. And then it ends with, okay, did I not tell you that I know the unseen of the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you conceal. Once again, a recurring theme of this whole surah, a central theme, a thread from start to finish, is Allah knows all. Right? And what does that mean? That the way Allah Ta'ala has set up the whole system, this is not arbitrary. He's done it with knowledge, with wisdom. Okay, that's the first story. So what do we take from the first story? A few things. Allah Ta'ala has given a purpose for humanity, which is to be the Khalifas on the earth. And He's given us skills, qualifications that He has not given the angels.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
That last sentence, is that like directed towards the angels or towards us? Because it's like, the angels, they can't conceal.
Yeah, that's it.
Maybe they can conceal.
Oh. But like, not really.
Sure. I think this is primarily directed at the angels, but it would be universal. I mean, conceal does not automatically mean willfully hiding something, right? So, it's if the angels have self-consciousness, and what I mean by this is that they have names, they have identities, as opposed to drones, right? And they have enough intellect to think about things, to question things, then they might have enough intellect to actually think about it before asking. So it could be that they're also raising questions, they're thinking of questions that they haven't asked. Yeah, more or less. These are things we're extrapolating from the ayahs. Okay, that's the first event. Second event, the prostration. Now things get dramatic and exciting. So, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا, and when we said, لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, to the angels, أُسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ, do sajda to Adam. فَسَجَدُوا, and they prostrated, إِلَّا Iblis, but not Iblis. 34, so the second story. Allah,
Come in.
or Abba, might be the other group.
Oh, it's out there.
Let's on that thing.
Is it the store?
Let's the kids.
Is that the dollhouse door there?
No. It's a
More
sunny.
intense doorbell for a dollhouse.
Can you flip the?
Yeah.
No, right here. Flip the plug, just move it to the next.
Where?
Move the plug to the next outlet.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the door was locked.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they all prostrate, but not Iblis. And then three things are said about him. Abba, he refused. Wastakbara. Your translations probably say he was arrogant. A better translation is that he sought arrogance.
He what? He sought?
Sought arrogance. We'll explain when we get to it. Wakana min al-kafirin, and he was, or he became, among the kafirs. Okay, a lot in this simple ayah. So Allah Ta'ala tells the angels to prostrate to Adam. Why is Allah Ta'ala telling the angels to prostrate to Adam? Why? Yes, ma'am.
Because he told them to.
That's the bottom line. Right. For example, why did Allah Ta'ala make humans the Khalifas on the earth? Because that's what He chose to do. Symbolically, what does the prostration mean? That the angels are prostrating to Adam. Symbolically, what is that saying? But so who's submitting to who?
It's a higher form of creation.
Yeah, essentially it's saying that the angels, that Adam, peace be upon him, is a superior creation to the angels, or over the angels. Why did they prostrate? So we talk about why did Allah make it? Because He did. What does it mean symbolically? It means that Adam is superior. Why did they prostrate?
He asked us to do it.
Because Allah Ta'ala told them to do so. So who's their prostration actually to? Prostration is actually to Allah Ta'ala. Right? The form of the prostration is to Adam. But the actual obedience is to God. Just like if I'm standing in front of the Kaaba, I'm prostrating, facing the Kaaba, but my prostration is to God. Okay, now if I just read this ayah on its own, I will think that Iblis is an angel. Because it says they all prostrated, but not Iblis. But that's not the form of the passage. It's like it's as though we said that all of the students were told to stand, and they all stood, but not the donkey. That's basically the form. Now, taking this, the other passages that speak about this ayah, Allah Ta'ala speaks to the angel, speaks to Iblis, and he says to Iblis, and I'm paraphrasing, when I gave the command, why did you prostrate? Good. What could Iblis have said? You're all going to say, well, he said, you created me from fire, I'm better than him, all that. What could he have said?
I'm not an angel.
Could have said the command is not for me. The command is for angels. He could have said, I only prostrate to you, God. Okay. But that's not what he said. So what did he say? I'm better than him. You created me from fire, you created me from clay. Okay. So he could have given a lot of reasonable arguments, but that's not why he didn't prostrate. So here's the question. Was this an obligation on Iblis to prostrate? Allah Ta'ala tells the angels prostrate, and Iblis is what? What is Iblis? So is this an obligation on him? So there's two schools. One school is that no, it's not an obligation on him. Nevertheless, he still refused. Even if it was a command on everyone else, he's still refusing to also prostrate. So again, if we told all the students to stand up, and the donkey's sitting there saying, I don't care if God is not, well, I don't care if the person is not talking to me, I'm not going to stand up. So that's one scenario. That the command is not for him, nevertheless he's still refusing. The other scenario, the other common interpretation of this is that because he had such a high status, that he was among the angels with God, and the command was also for him. But in both cases, he's refusing. So now let's make this interesting. Iblis is not his real name. Iblis is the title given to him. What's his real name? Azazel.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun. Oh, sorry. Okay.
For real?
So there was this huge battle that was occurring between all the jinns.
Yeah.
And Zee was the one who settled that battle.
When you said
How-
global warp gens, I
that like
wrote
common
down,
knowledge?
like Lord of the Rings.
Well, it's
Which part common
Lord of
knowledge?
the Rings.
What?
Is which part common knowledge?
Azazel,
Is that his name or something else?
Jinn
His
story.
common knowledge that Iblis is not his real name. Well, I can't even call it common knowledge if you didn't know that it's not common knowledge. Yeah.
Israelite sources we talked about before you
So-
came.
I
So,
love
The
yeah.
name Iblis comes from Ballasa Yuballisu, which means the one who has despaired and
So it's kind
separated
of weird,
himself.
right? Because you said that Azazel was subsequently called Hakam.
Yes.
And Hakam is wisdom, but this guy has anything but wisdom.
Exactly.
You know.
And so what is some backstory about him? The belief is that he believed he should have been the Khalifa. Because he established peace on earth. More backstory about Iblis. There is not a spot on the earth where he did not do sajda to Allah.
Whoa.
Every spot here, every spot outside, every spot everywhere, he is used to do sajda to Allah. I don't mean to, say anything right now. Okay, he's good.
That would explain
Right.
a
Who
lot
was he
in
like?
terms of the
Was he like
midnight
in male
noises.
form, or was he like?
So your first choice of words was in male form.
No, I mean like human form, or was he like bigger
Watch
than
your
us?
foot, watch your foot.
You know?
No one knows very much.
So-
So this is this Israeliyat, like the fact that he did sajda.
So the sajda part, the person who I'm getting it from,
Yeah.
I don't think that person would quote Israeliyat, so it might be coming somewhere from our sources.
So where are we getting this whole? Because I've never heard this.
The backstories.
The backstory, like
So,
first,
the-
you're saying it's the Israeli, possibly an Israeli, but
Yeah, I have to go back
how
and
do
find.
we know that connection that
it could all be fake, it could all be fake.
It could
All
all
be
be
made up, yeah, absolutely. Also in our sources, one of his names is Al-Harith. What's Harith? Like the one who cultivates. So Harith is to cultivate, like to cultivate soil, like in agriculture. Yeah. And it could be, considering we're talking about the devil, if any of it's true. Right. Nevertheless, it adds drama to the story.
So it's really arrogance. I mean, it's like
Okay.
the fact that he accomplished X, Y, and Z and
Okay.
everything else, it just drove him to become more and more arrogant.
So here's where it gets interesting. Notice, like I said, that he refused,
Yeah.
and then wastakbara. This form in Arabic, when you have ast or must, the generic definition, so the root here is habara, which means, like what Allahu Akbar is from, takbir
Is
is
that
from,
34? that you're
at the very end of ayah 34.
Okay.
Aba
What's in the-
wastakbara wa kana min al-kafirin. When a word, this particular form of verbiage, literally verbiage, often means that you're seeking something. Okay? So mustaqim, istiqam, mustaqim, sirat al-mustaqim, straight path.
Yeah.
A little bit more accurately would be the path that you're seeking to establish.
Mhm.
Okay? Or the path that is seeking to reestablish itself.
So istiqama.
Yeah. So the ist at the beginning
Yeah.
is a very special Arabic prefix.
Mhm.
It's called form 10. And so the point is that you could argue that it says he refused and was arrogant, or he refused and sought arrogance. So let's make sense of this. Let's jump forward to, I think it's ayah 83. I always forget what ayah this is.
Why is it saying like he was uplifted after?
Yeah, we'll look at that too in a moment. So,
I 83 was your buffalo.
yeah. Yeah, 83. No, not 83. 87.
That's Torah and Moses.
87. So the first part of ayah 87 is we certainly gave Moses the Torah and followed up with after him with messengers, and we gave Jesus, the son of Mary, clear proofs, supported him with the pure spirit, and this is the part that I want to focus on, this latter part of ayah 87. Is it not the case that every time a messenger comes to you with what your soul or yourself, your nafs, did not want, Sophie, teasing.
Okay, that's fine.
Wait, is this 83 in Baqarah?
87.
The inside joke.
Essentially,
For the whole class.
it's part of Muhammad's appreciation.
He's an anti-Sufite.
Okay. Okay. Then, is it that anytime the messenger came to with something that your nafs, your soul, your hawa did not want, you responded, and then we have three levels of response. One, astakbartum. Same word, astakbar. Okay? Here it'd be essentially you became arrogant or you hid behind arrogance. Then, وَفَرِيقًا كَذَّبْتُمْ. And then you accuse some of them of lying. وَفَرِيقًا تَقْتُلُونَ. And you kill them. Okay? Look at this as three levels of response. When you're hit with something that you know is true, you know it's good for you, but you just don't want it. So then what does a person do? One level is you hide behind arrogance. This is stupid. This is a waste of time. So what I'm saying is that arrogance, we often look at it as a state that you just take on when you've accomplished something. More than that, it's a defense mechanism. So I can be someone who's accomplished nothing in my life and still have arrogance as a defense mechanism. And then if that's not enough for me to feel protected in my willful ignorance, then I might go so far as to accuse the messenger of lying, character assassination. And if that's not enough, then I might even resort to violence. So what do we have here? We have the story of the Quraysh in Makkah. How did the Quraysh first respond to the Prophet, peace be upon him? They ignored him, they made fun of him, he went through a phase. Then when that wasn't enough because he continued to preach, then they resorted to character assassination. You're going to stay away from him, he's a soothsayer, he's a poet, he's going to split up your family, he's plagiarized all this. Then when that wasn't enough, then they resorted to violence. First against his followers, and then ultimately they decided to do violence against him.
So when did this ayah come at a time when Muhammad was being persecuted? I mean, was it foreshadowing what's going to happen to him? Or
The ayah
this
87?
particular ayah, yeah.
Ayah 87, I think, because this is the context of the people of the book,
Yeah.
it's probably something related to Medina.
Medina, so it's afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. So the point I'm making, going back to Iblis, or Rajim, ayah 34, is that it could be that his arrogance caused him to refuse the prostration, or he refused out of jealousy. And thus, he hid behind arrogance. I'm not going to prostrate, I'm better than him. That's the excuse he gave, as opposed to the motivation. And then, وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ, this is read a few ways. And so he was among the kafirs, is understood a few ways. One, because of this behavior, because of showing arrogance to God, he effectively became a kafir. So he's someone who believes in God, he's speaking to God, and he's kafir, which is pretty frightening. Good. Or he was kafir all along. So what kind of
So why
kafir
would he
he used to be?
be doing all this sex stuff and prostrating and all this stuff?
So, again, the point about him being in the company of God is extra sources. So the point is that he's making all these prostrations, but it's a show.
Yeah.
He prostrated on every inch of the earth, and it's possible that not one of them was sincere. Yeah, it's kind of frightening. One of you is about it. Yeah.
Is Ghana like past perfect? Like, isn't that what's like the finishes, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the forms, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kana min al-kafirin can be, he used to be among the kafirs.
Yeah.
He was always among the kafirs. He became one of the kafirs. So Kana is the to-be verb, and it has that wide range. I mean, does that affect?
No, I was just wondering because I thought Ghana was like you do something and then it's over.
So you're saying it's done?
Yeah.
Meaning, so he's no longer kafir.
I mean, obviously not. But.
Let me think about this. I'd have to look that up for like those grammatical points.
Can you
Yeah.
go over the technical definition for kafir again?
So kafir is someone who feels compelled to turn to God, but suppresses it. So think about Iblis. He is speaking to Allah Ta'ala, and he's kafir.
Doesn't he have the word kafara on his forehead or something?
That is the sign of the people who are the army of Ad-Dajjal, which is especially interesting because Loon Watch has this article about how Sears, I don't know if they realize it, they're selling military like T-shirts that have kafir, and all these military guys are getting kafir tattoos and everything. Dun dun dun. So imagine if you get kafir baseball caps. Isn't it?
My sister saw a truck where she was at a picnic and it had this thing, it was like a bumper sticker almost on the window said copper.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Technically, the actual hadith says kaf fa ra,
Yeah.
so it may not even necessarily be the word kafir.
We go for it.
It could be kafir, go for something else. It could be the cheese or that yogurt. What is
Kefir?
it?
It's like the eat
You eat that.
That's just don't stand on it for it.
Okay. So what are some lessons to take from this story, the story of the tree?
Can I ask you a
Yes,
question?
please.
This goes back to you were saying there's one school of thought that says maybe he didn't have to prostrate.
Yeah.
But he's still a creation,
Yeah, but the commands to the angels.
so not
Angels
necessarily
have free will.
commanded to him.
Angels have
Yeah,
free
that's
will.
the point. Yeah. So it would be, for example, hypothetically, if there are humans there, the command is only for angels.
And also, angels do it, right? But
Didn't Allah say to him, or did he not say, should Iblis, why didn't you prostrate?
Yeah, he said, when I gave the command, why didn't you
Yeah.
prostrate,
Yeah.
right? So even that, does that
Doesn't
mean?
that imply, that's my confusion, doesn't that imply therefore that he was too commanded?
Not necessarily.
No.
Because it could be, when I gave them the command, I'm not pointing to you as a police, but when I gave them the command, why didn't you do it, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, we could perhaps infer that he's asking, why didn't you do what you were supposed to do?
Right.
Or, as a conversation, why didn't you do it? And never will I do this. There's another story which might be Isra'iliyat, might be a hadith literature, I haven't found a source, that Musa alayhi salam tells Iblis, Rajim, okay, I've been informed that you can have forgiveness of Allah. You want forgiveness of Allah? He says, yes, of course. He says, all you have to do is go to Adam's grave and do sajda. He says, no, I can't do that. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
wow.
But he does dua, right?
Yeah.
He does
So
dua.
let's take this further. What does Allah Ta'ala tell him after he says, I'm never going to prostrate, I'm better than him, you create me from fire, you created me from clay. What does Allah Ta'ala tell him? Banished. Right? If you're banished from the company of Allah Ta'ala, you're going to hell. Allah Ta'ala is telling him, go to hell. Okay. Then he makes a request, a dua. What's the dua?
Let me
Don't send me now. Wait until the day of judgment. Makes a second request, second dua, which is more of a vow, which is what? This is all in the Quran. I'm going to sit on the straight path. He says, it's your fault. He says, it's your fault, Allah. You made this happen to me. I'm going to wait on the straight path and ambush your followers from in front of them, from behind them, from the left, from the right. what does Allah Ta'ala tell him? That, essentially paraphrase, you're welcome to try, but you're not going to be able to take on my true believers.
How could he undertake something like that if he believes
Arrogance.
in knows?
He's blaming it.
But
This
he
is the
knows
thing
he's
about
doing
it.
this, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can lead you down
That's severe.
Just like that.
It's not just, yeah.
Okay, this is a perfect setup for the next story.
Wait, are we on 35?
35. Yeah.
I
She's
love
been
it.
lost.
Cliffhanger.
We need to
Wait, we're,
This is in Surah Al-A'raf. I forgot what exact eye numbers. I think it's near the beginning if someone wants to quickly look. 7. Actually, it's either Surah Al-An'am or Surah Al-A'raf.
What was the question again?
Where are the ayahs?
No, Anila first question.
Yeah, where are the ayahs?
Oh,
Like about, he's going to wait in the straight path.
Oh,
It's interesting because it seems like the default is the straight path then, like, which is.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, do you
Oh,
think that even as
It is,
believers, that
I'm sorry.
Okay, I want you to tell us what ayahs.
I think 16.
So in Nilfer, it's Surah 7, ayah 16. Yeah. Slowly.
sorry.
you get that?
What was your question?
my question is that according to your definition of kafir,
Yeah.
aren't we all at some level doing that though?
The if with question.
I'm not
Explain.
actually done.
No.
Just kidding.
Explain further. Why?
Because on some level, we're taking some commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and saying, well, it's okay that we don't do it because we do something else, or like, that doesn't apply to our time, or something,
Well, I mean, if we're automatically giving reasons, then I'd say this would not make us kafir. At worst, it makes us sinners, right? So it goes just like the conversation we had some time ago when I asked, is lying shirk, right? That lying sounds like shirk because in that moment I'm more concerned about this person's ability to reward me or punish me. So it sounds like shirk, but it's not shirk, it's a sin, right? In the same way, there's a lot of, who knows however many sins, well, I probably know how many sins I've committed today, right? But there's still the notion that I'm not supposed to, right? So therefore it would not be kufr. Okay. So I would agree that we all do wrong. Okay. But I
Because I
would,
guess what I'm saying is that we're suppressing that inclination to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in His commandments
Sure.
told us to do.
I mean, if we had like a lowercase k kufr, right?
Oh.
But isn't
Then
that
maybe
more
that
like
works.
hypocrite though?
Potentially it can be hypocrite too, but it could be sin.
No, but if you're acknowledging the fact that this is a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're trying to make excuses for it because for whatever reason it's hard and you don't want to do it, you're acknowledging the fact that
Uh-huh.
this has been ordained and
Mhm.
you're saying, oh, I just can't do it as part
But,
of me. Versus making excuses because I feel like that's worse than making excuses because you're knowingly denying the truth.
Yeah, again, I'm saying that I'm cautious to make that leap, right? To say I'm knowingly denying the truth. So,
I'm not saying it's just about anything. For example, there's that whole, I guess, movement in Canada where you're saying hijab is not, like, it's not even, like, you're not supposed to do it. That's
Darn
it's
Canadians.
Canada, yeah. Where is Canada anyways? Anybody
No,
ever
I mean,
been to
but
Canada? Does it even
It's
exist?
written in the Quran, so how are you going to go and say that it's just, there's, is it just based on interpretation then? Or, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it might come down to what is the motivation behind it, right? If I legitimately have an interpretation that seems to run counter to the majority, that's one thing. If I've decided in advance, here's my conclusion, and I'm forcing the passages to fit my conclusion, that's something else.
I'm just gonna say one last thing.
Yeah, far away.
Okay, so like, I'm sure there are folks who are like ultra practicing who would disagree with this gathering. Like, we should be like Bardat or something, So I'm just saying, like, if we then don't think
I'm
that
one
that's...
of those people. I just come here and I'm like, I was a good
No, but you see what I'm saying? Like, there's
I shouldn't even make
different,
jokes
there's
like that.
different ideas of how we should be conducting ourselves as Muslims.
Okay,
So if we're feeling like I don't know how I feel about that,
about which part?
No, I'm just saying like certain things like the separation to the point where there's farda, like amongst a gathering, like if you like, is there an ultimate truth about things like that? Like if you're saying that if you're feeling like that's not what Islam says, I guess you don't really know then, right? And is there a direct ruling about things like that? I don't know.
Well, look at a lot of Islamic practice as qualitative, that in our desire we often want fixed answers. So a simple issue is, at what point can you start making traveling prayers? Anybody give me an answer?
It's like a 70 miles?
Oh yeah, you guys are all gonna give me numbers, right?
30.
Or something,
Yeah.
something like that.
Hey,
It's
you
like
guys you're all giving me numbers,
Oh,
numbers, numbers.
it's when you're a day
Did I
away.
say that?
Sorry?
When you're a day away.
Still a
from your
number,
home.
still a number.
It's just
What
a day away.
if we say when you're in the psychology of traveling?
Yes.
Qualitative.
I feel like
So the point being that a lot of times we've been conditioned to give me a fixed number, right? But a lot of times that's adding more rigidity than what's there. And you're forbidding things that are,
If you make it the psychology of the individual person, you just made like how many different rules. Like I get tired in 2 miles. Like I have to do
well, okay, when I'm saying tired, do you have the psychology that you're traveling?
I know,
right?
but then that
But I could
leaves
walk
it
out
as
of my
a
house and be like, I'm
subjective thing.
traveling now.
And
If you can do that honestly, so my
When I go
commute,
downtown, I feel like
my commute tomorrow
I have
morning,
no idea where I am.
my commute tomorrow morning is 70 miles.
Okay.
Okay, that matches every single possible school. So should I pray traveling?
If you want.
You can.
Because you're not traveling.
But I'm not traveling.
oh.
Traveling.
Yeah.
But it, I mean,
That's
if you're-
just your commute, regular commute.
That's my commute 3 times a week. Yeah.
Traveling is a
Depends
So
on
you're
how
not
much
on that
So-
line.
So, but you see what I'm saying?
But can't you though? Like, you could though if you wanted.
I could definitely make that, I could definitely easily justify praying traveling, and then, hey, I can get Asr, Zohar, everything out of the way, like 2 rakats, no problem, right? But the point is that, that a lot of times, when we're seeking fixed numbers, we're adding rigidity that's not there.
Mhm.
I think a lot of our religion is like numbers, though.
I mean, there are a lot of things, but a lot of things are also better addressed qualitatively. I mean, there's a sincerity component, right? I mean, if I walk out of my house and I'm going to Jewel, I'm like, oh, I better pack a lunch, you know? Then that might not be as. And I'm taking 50 kids with me. That's
No.
that's not true. No, we're not talking about that. Yeah. Okay.
I have one more question about
Yeah, far away.
Does he like still make dua? And like, do we know
That's my question.
everything about his, like, how he's going to be judged and stuff like that?
So more interesting things about Iblis, al-Rajim. He is a scholar. It's fair to assume that he's a scholar. He's also said to be beautiful, right? So he was created in like a very beautiful form, right? It all adds to the drama. He's gonna do it.
Because the devil's supposed to be scary. You would think.
In heavy metal music, sure, but
The devil is really scary pictures. Like my school's mascot is a devil.
it's a devil.
Red, not just any devil, red devil.
So you do go to IFS? No.
Being recorded.
Oh my god.
Okay,
That part.
35?
next story. Well, qulna, and we said, Ya Adamu, O Adam. Small side point, might be big side point. Hawa, wife of Adam, Eve, peace be upon her, is not mentioned by name in the Quran. Ya Adamu, okay, O Adam, uskun anta wa zawjuka. So you and your life live. Al-jannata, so live in the garden, live in paradise. وَكُلَا مِنْهَا رَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا. So eat, both of you, from it freely, wherever you want. And then, وَلَا تَقْرَبَا, you two, do not come near هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةَ, do not come near this tree. فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ, or else you will become among the wrongdoers. Okay. So a few things. Askan, dwell. This is an interesting point, worth mentioning. That one of the words for home, among the words for home, are bait, dar. Askan is another word for home. What is the root word of askan? Sakana, which also is a root word for what? Sakina. And so, in terms of philosophy, psychology, what is the home supposed to be? Your place of tranquility. So you're in the noise of the outside world, and your home philosophically is to be the place where you have your peace and quiet. That when we're coming home, there's a part of us that is seeking peace and quiet. Now think about this when you think about how much electronics we have, going on, whether we're talking about phone, television, internet. We are disrupting our own need for peace and quiet. And this is not talking about having 60,000 kids that are running around. Sometimes that's an issue. But Askan. It's also interesting when I went on Hajj, and I don't know if you guys noticed this this trip or previous trips. It's like every neighborhood was Askan bin Laden. That was the year 2000. I was like, what? Askan bin Laden, so neighborhood of Bin Laden. And then I discovered there's a whole Bin Laden construction company and such. That basically,
I didn't know that.
yeah, that was pre 9/11. So I was like, do people know about this? Yeah. Okay, so you and your spouse live in al-Jannah. What is the root word of Jannah? This is also interesting. Jim Nun Nun, which is also the same root word of every Muslim undergrad's favorite topic, jinn. So what is the idea of Jannah? It's not just the garden, it's the unseen garden. Yeah. That's quite a gasp there. Sorry? Okay, so eat freely wherever you want. وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةَ. So now relate to Naima's point. The Quran does not specify which tree it is, right? There's a conversation that Shaitan has with them where he says this is the tree that will make you immortal. But it's Shaitan speaking, so it could be a lie. Yeah. In the Bible, in Genesis, there's two trees in paradise. The tree of knowledge, and so it's the knowledge of good and evil, but the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. So that movie, Tree of Life, it's basically referring to the other tree. So Adam and Eve, peace be upon them, in the Bible are told not to go to the tree of knowledge. And so think about the philosophy that generates. Knowledge is a threat, which is the opposite of what we've been saying in this passage, right? Allah knows all, we have no knowledge except for Allah Ta'ala gave us, but that is our superiority. It's our knowledge, our intellect. Ours is a tradition where knowledge is central to the point that the Prophet, peace be upon him, says knowledge is light, right?
It makes me wonder how, because when I talk to these non-Muslim groups,
Yeah.
I don't really think about that.
Well, they're
difference
probably
in-
not aware of it either.
Well, I didn't even think about that, how they think of that as a tree of knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I'll always talk about, well, we all know the story of Adam,
Mm-hmm.
and then many times I'll say, not all the time, is that God was teaching him forgiveness, like repentance and forgiveness, and they're like, I get this perplexed look on their faces, so that makes a lot of sense.
Did they know that it was Shaitan?
Who's they?
Adam.
Oh, that's a good question. Because the ayah right here, the next ayah is فَأَزَلَّهُمَا الشَّيْطَانِ. So Shaitan makes them slip. Do they know? Allah knows best. The other thing to think about is chronologically, is this happening before or after the sajda? Could be the same time. Before or after he gets kicked out? Probably before that, but again, who knows how chronology works over there.
My Christian friends, they told me it was because, it was, the knowledge of, the unseen. And it was, a prideful thing.
So in terms of Christian theology, you have a couple understandings of this knowledge. Knowledge of the unseen I'm not aware of. Knowledge of your own unseen is the way it's commonly read. So privacy, right? Because they go to the tree and then they're exposed to themselves, right?
Why would he be going against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before the Sajda incident?
Out of jealousy. So again, in our sources, when Adam alayhi salam is being formed, Iblis would walk around looking at him and he'd kick him.
I have a question about the rib story. That is
It's not our tradition.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
The closest thing in our tradition is woman is curved like a rib. So if you try to straighten her, you'll break her. But I don't know of any passage that even remotely says that she's coming from his rib.
Okay, so it may
That's
be that
biblical tradition.
it may be that she was also created and also learned.
Allah knows best.
I don't know. Just because I feel like, I don't know, her story kind of is I don't know, women and that origin story is kind of important.
Sure.
In that term.
This is an interesting point because we don't really talk about her story very much.
Yeah.
Because often when we're speaking of this story, we're contrasting with how much more egalitarian it is in gender compared to the biblical story. But let's go to that part in a moment. But yeah, beyond that, I don't think we really talk about it too much. Where is she said to be buried?
Jeddah.
Jeddah. And why do we say that?
I think the word Jeddah comes from.
Jeddah means grandmother. Right. So, yeah, Allah knows best. Did you say you need to know this? This is Muhammad. He knows these things. Yeah, it's through his Sufi connections, mashallah. Okay.
Sufi connections there.
So, another thing to think about. Look at the psychology that's been created. Go everywhere. Eat everything. Just don't come near this tree. How different if it just said, don't come near this tree? What's the difference in the two? First one, go everywhere, eat whatever you want. Okay? Just don't come here.
Gives you an option.
Yeah. As opposed to only saying, just don't come near here. Good. So the point is that, think of the psychology that's being created. They're told, go everywhere you want, just not this one spot. But as we all know, especially with kids, you got 50,000 toys, and there's the knife on the table. If you move the knife away, the kid can't see any more of the toys. All the kid sees is the knife. I want the knife, right? So this is also very much human nature. How old are they at the time? Like when you're picturing them, are you picturing them as adults?
Yes. Yeah.
Why? It's not
Because they're
indicated.
married.
Sorry? Yeah, but this is heaven, right? So,
I thought
They're ageless.
Isa alayhi salam was like 33, and that's like the
Bible.
heaven age. Oh, that's the
Bible.
Bible.
yeah, that's Bible. Yeah. So the age, the maturity.
The
Bible. The Bible.
So the point is that those are also details that we commonly picture in the story that are not necessarily in the text.
What is that 80-foot thing? Like, I don't